Major Garrett joins us now from Charleston, South Carolina. Major, was there anything in particular that led to Walker pulling out of the race?
Several factors. Trump is one of them, his own performance another, and he hired too many people. And it's instructive in this era when we talk about super PACs sustaining presidential campaigns forever and ever to remind ourselves that you also need to raise regular dollars through the normal campaign process to sustain a day-to-day campaign operation. Scott Walker could not do that. Rick Perry could not do that. So we often sort of simplify this. I would say oversimplify the idea, well, if you have a big set of financial donors who can write a big check for your super PAC, you can live in a presidential contest for a long time. Not necessarily true. Case in point, Scott Walker has $25 million in his super PAC, which of course can't coordinate with his day-to-day campaign. His day-to-day campaign couldn't fund all the people Scott Walker hired, which is one of the reasons he's out of this race. Another is Trump sucked up all the oxygen, made it very hard for him to break through. Lastly, Scott Walker just wasn't as impressive on the stump in Iowa and elsewhere as many Republicans thought he would be after facing a recall election in Wisconsin, winning there. A lot of Republicans thought Walker was a much more potent political actor than he turned out to be on the stump.
So we had Rick Perry drop out 11 days ago. Now we have Walker. You know, there are a lot of candidates, though, joining them in the basement, in the single-digit zone in these polls. Can we expect now, after the second debate, to see more of these candidates dropping out?
Well, you certainly have to ask yourself, if Scott Walker cannot hang around and doesn't see the reason to hang around and is asking other Republicans similarly positioned, as you suggested, in the basement of the Republican presidential home, if you will, to get out, to focus Republican voters' attention on who the likely nominee is going to be, and in Scott Walker's words, consolidate and coalesce around someone not named Donald Trump. I mean, it was unmistakable what Scott Walker said yesterday. I'm leaving the race, and I encourage other Republicans to get out so we can focus on knocking off Donald Trump. Other Republicans may follow that, but other Republicans might also consider it a point of pride to stay in the race and say, hey, I lasted longer than Scott Walker, who everyone thought was going to be such a potent and politically successful Republican candidate. I'm still here. That may encourage them to raise money, but it's also a cautionary tale. If you don't have money on the regular day-to-day operational side of your campaign, you can't continue.
Major, you're there in Charleston for a Carly Fiorina event. Her key vulnerability, and one that Donald Trump and others have pointed out, seems to be her time spent as CEO of Hewlett-Packard. In 2012, we saw Mitt Romney have a similar problem. Is she learning that same kind of lesson about the importance of telling her story while at HP and what she did there?
Well, for Fiorina, this is not a new issue politically. She had to deal with it in her Senate campaign against Barbara Boxer. That did not turn out well. Two things about Carly Fiorina since that campaign. She's learned that this is a real issue. It works against her, and she better have a counter narrative or counter story to deal with it. And two, she's gone to school on herself. I've talked to many Republicans who find Carly Fiorina a vastly improved candidate than she was when she ran for the Senate against Barbara Boxer. That growth is instructive because it means Carly Fiorina probably admitted she wasn't that good a candidate, went to school on herself, learned some things about her flaws, and tried to improve them. But the one thing about the HP story is you cannot erase what happened. The stock price did plummet. Yes, there was a tech recession around that. Many thousands of HP workers were laid off. There was a big debate about whether or not Carly Fiorina is solely responsible for those layoffs, if she was a good manager, if her golden parachute upon being fired by the HP board was too generous. All of those things are live issues. They're likely to be less resonant in a Republican primary context than they would be nationally if Fiorina became the nominee or the running mate, but she knows she has to deal with this. Many in the HP world consider her answers to be oversimplified, bordering on disingenuous, but Fiorina says, it was a tough time, I made hard decisions, the board was against me, and I was a casualty of board infighting at Hewlett-Packard. That's her story, and she's sticking to it.
All right, Major Garrett in South Carolina. Major, thanks for your insight.